Audio check, sound check, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good morning and good evening to all of you. This is your trainer here. We are now ready to start. In tonight's session, we will be learning about a few other areas of the data modeling, and then the primary agenda is to learn about the transports. How we run the transports, what are the types of the transports, and the steps of the HANA transports. So we start with the studio. Yesterday in our session, we were able to create our user ID and be able to add into the navigator panel. And we were also able to check the connectivity from outside HANA using Excel to connect to our views. And when you reopen the studio, you'll have your user ID here. And in order to log on to your user ID, you have to right-click and click here, Log On. Provide the password. And log on to your user ID. Now, if there is any requirement for a user integration, with a outside HANA user for reporting purposes or for other SSO single sign-on, we will learn about that here with the CMC. There is a small diagram that I would like to share, and that is the SSO concept, or user integration concept with HANA. The user integration concept is basically how we bring together user IDs into the corresponding HANA user ID, or map an external user to a HANA user. Single sign-on, SSO. So let's take an example that there is a user 1 at a reporting tool, and this user 1 has to log on into HANA, because for the reporting, the user requires to connect to the views. This is for the read access. In some cases, there could be another user 2 who is performing both reporting and HANA development of the views. Similarly as well, the user need to check or connect to the backend HANA view. Right? There could be another user 3, for example, who is from SAP or other Windows Active Directory or other third-party application, who would like to connect into the HANA views with the same user ID. So similarly, the read access. Now, it could be possible that individual user IDs could be created in HANA and the user logs on here into HANA. For example, for user 1, we will have a user HANA 1. For user 2, we could have the corresponding user HANA 2, and likewise for the user 3, we will have user HANA 3. Yep. So whether the user decides to log on with their corresponding user ID of HANA, it's okay. But if there is a need to integrate together with the same user ID, then there will be an intermediate layer in between, which is here, just on top of HANA, to be able to integrate users. And to integrate users, we use the SAP Business Objects Central Management Console, CMC. So the intermediate layer between the backend HANA and the front-end reporting tools or other application servers, the interface here is the BOBJ Central Management Console, where we map these user IDs and run an SSO. So the steps, we go into the system, we open the interface layer, which is the CMC, start, all programs, scroll down here, and then SAP Business Objects BI platform. You select here the SAP Business Objects BI platform Central Management Console. The CMC is used by all the administrators, SAP administrators, network administrators, business objects, enterprise administrators, vendors, for a lot of administrative activities. One of them is the SSO, single sign-on. So we'll see how it looks like. Provide our corresponding user password. Click here, log on, and then we'll have a landing page for the administration of the BO, Business Objects Enterprise System. Here, the BOBJ administrator or the basis administrator will be able to organize all of these areas, for example, creating folders, assigning a folder to a reporting user, and restricting the same folder to other user who is not authorized, or personal folders of the end user, or group together all of those folders into categories or personal group of categories. Users and groups, and a lot of the other areas, for example, maintaining security profiles at the BOB-J layer, the SAP inbox, server services of the BOB-J and the BODS, replication list of the BODS, federation of the BODS, query results of the BOB-J reporting portfolio, temporary storage for all the data stores, and then you have universe, which is there are two types of universes that we'll learn tomorrow in our reporting session: connections, web services, all app connections, business objects, data services. So these are all the other administrative areas, and what we will be selecting is this one, the fifth link, which is users and groups, or user groups. I'm going to click here, and we'll come back with the list of all the user groups. Here, the administrator or the security consultant of the BOB-J or the BOE, Business Objects Enterprise, will create new users. All right. And then provide the user ID, likewise, and then the email address of the user ID, and then the initial password, and then create a user here in the BO. Okay, so the group hierarchies given here are all the user groups that are collected into one group. If you're interested to find a individual user ID, we click here on the user list. And then you'll have multiple user IDs right here. So for example, there is a user here, Naveen user, for example. I'm going to right click, go here into the properties, and then you will see the user details. So user account name, full name, email ID, description, user security, is a member of the groups, values, account management. Okay. Right. Now, let's create a sample user here. And when you create a sample user, you have to specify the authentication type. So you have multiple authentication types when creating a user here in the BO enterprise.
Muted.
And in this particular checkbox, there is a enable option which will allow the SSO account name. Okay. Audio check. Yeah. So this area okay, hold on. Check, check. So looks like we are okay. Yeah. Audio check, sound check. Right. So we are here at this properties of the user. And when you right-click on the user, select properties, you'll have the properties with the password and the other details of the user ID. Now what we see here is the database credentials. And the database credential here is the HANA database credentials. So when you select this enable checkbox, you can provide the corresponding HANA user ID, user PR, and the HANA user password. Confirm and save. So what we just did was an easy and simple mapping of the user. So the mapping of the user from Bob J, Z user Bob J HANA with the Z user PR user of HANA. So this is where we have a user integration taking place between a Bob J user ID and a HANA user ID. So whenever a Bob J user would like to create some views in HANA or run a query or create a universe in the Bob J and then pick up a view from HANA, the user will only continue to use this user ID and not this user ID here, because the primary user account that the user will be using is outside HANA system, and then it will be able to integrate into the backend HANA system. In some cases, one account name of the Bob J could be integrated into one HANA user, or multiple Bob J users can be integrated into HANA. Right? So I repeat, one HANA user can be integrated to one Bob J user. Likewise, multiple Bob J users can be integrated to one HANA user. For example, you have user 2, user 3, user 4, which are all the reporting users. So we can run the mapping towards one HANA user here. Okay, that's a very important point. So once the integration is done, you can close and you can allow the user to log on with the BobJ user and then connect to the HANA views respectively with the backend HANA user. So the database credentials which are given here is given with the BobJ administrator into HANA using a option at the quick launch of the studio, which is right here, that is shown as configure import server. The configure import server, when you click, will ask for BobJ server IP address or BobJ server host name, the central repository name, the data source where we use the data source to connect, and then the port number. So once the vendor provides those details, and then we go into the CMC and map the user with the corresponding HANA user, the single sign-on is thereby completed. Later, when the user would like to log on, the user only use one user ID and log on into BobJ, and that same user ID is used again to log on into HANA from BobJ. What we have to remember is the user ID that we create in HANA has to be an enterprise type of user. Further other details about the user restriction, user management, you will be required to go for a separate BobJ Enterprise Administration Certification course. But this is from a HANA standpoint, how a user can go with an SSO to a backend HANA system. Yep. So you can use the same techie user to log on to the BobJ CMC, the same user password. Right? I'm using my trainer user. You can also go with your techie user ID and then log on here. Now, the next link that we see here after the analytic privilege is the procedure. So far, till the analytic privilege is all about the development and then security authorizations with SSO that we've seen just now, and how we create our user IDs and manage the roles, etc. The next part of the data modeling is the procedure, which is like a function, and the procedure will have a reusable lines of codes. A user will only use SQL scripts to create the procedure here. In some of the projects, you'll have your SQL programmer counterpart to develop functions, procedures. When you click here on procedure, it gives the information that procedures are used to create functions with SQL scripting. And then it could be used later by other objects, meaning other procedure call, or it could be called in from a SQL script editor, or even SQL script-based calculation views. The other link that we see here, the decision table, is an area for getting the exact result set without writing a single line of SQL coding. So what we generally perform in the procedure or function is a function call or a lookup function, or trying to go with the logic and check the values, right? With the SQL, with the nested select statements with multiple loops and conditional logic. Similarly, in the decision table, we can also apply that business rules and get our result for lookup for conditional check of the values that we would generally perform in a function or procedure is also achievable here through decision tables. Let's see one by one. Let's go here for the procedure first. We will be using the system user, or you can also use your own user ID to create procedures. Now we go here to our package, subpackage, and then right-click to create a new procedure from the context menu. Provide a naming standard, description. You can also copy from or define the default schema. The default schema is basically the user that you want to assign, or the developer who will be developing that particular SQL script-based object. Okay. In most of the cases, it is the system standard user that we are logged in right now, so we'll be using that default schema. The run with drop down here indicates how the SQL procedure would be executed, whether with a definer's rights, meaning a developer's rights with read and edit options. So if you create a procedure with a definer's rights, you'll be able to read, change, edit, delete, activate, all of those possible. But if you create a procedure with only the invoker's rights, it will only give the user to read or select, but not to delete or edit. By default, it's the definer's rights owned by the sysrepa. We have a similar screen that we've seen earlier in the SQL script-based calculation view, where the lines of the codes have to be written between the begin and the end block. To the right-hand side, we get to see two panels. One is an output panel, and the other is an input panel. The input panel will be having our input parameters, which are pre-declared by the SQL programmer, and it will provide the input for the logic, for the variable, for the condition, for the loop, or for other function calls with the parameters. Run the logic here, and then the output goes into the output parameters. So the process flow of a procedure is cyclic here, with input parameters giving the input, running the process, logic, and then the output parameters. Now, while creating an input parameter, we got to right-click here and select from the context menu scalar parameter or a new parameter. A scalar parameter is a range parameter which will allow your SQL programmer to define a range. For example, if there is a logic that has to be executed in between 2005 and 2010, you can provide the range of the scalar. How we do it is, for example, from year, select the data type, and varchar, length 4. Similarly, the next scalar is to year. Select the corresponding data type. We'll be using year and varchar, national varchar, length 4. So we have a from year and a to year, and between the from and the to, the actual input parameter will be sent. So you got to right-click again and select new from the context menu, where you provide the actual input parameters. and its corresponding data type and its length. So all the parameter variables in the HANA are always an array parameter. You may want to consult with your SQL programmers about what is an array variable or array parameter. It is a variable parameter which can contain larger number of values in an array stack. So a variable or a parameter does not always mean single value stored. It could store multiple values. So likewise here, you can have multiple values here, value parameter from Z1, Z2, Z3, likewise Z4, etc. Okay. So this is how you create Z input parameter with the parameter name and the data type. The Z input parameter will act like an internal temporary table with multiple fields. Although it's a parameter variable, it will consist of array stacks where it can store multiple values for multiple fields, like a table. So the ZINP will act like a temporary table, and then we'll have multiple other temporary fields. This provides the input to the logic, and then the output is sent over to the output parameters. A programmer can also create a predefined output parameter based upon the experience, based upon the logic that is required. So we have Z output parameter 1, parameter 2, for example. Other SQL programmers prefer to dynamically declare the variables here. var1 equals, just like what we have earlier, select. Okay. So it's a declaration and an initialization process together. So depending upon the preference and the convenience of the SQL programmer, they want to declare the variable in the coding or pre-declare as an input or output parameters. Now, a HANA application consultant may not be a SQL developer in all cases, or a business user may not be knowing about the SQL scripting. So the procedure activities that we perform here in these functions can also be performed in the decision tables. Yep. So a developer or a consultant who has less awareness about the SQL scripting can use the decision tables. Yeah. So the alternative approach of not writing a SQL line of code is available here in the decision tables. A HANA application consultant may or may not be a SQL programmer. So the option is given here that if we're working with business users and we're looking for an option where we don't write any SQL line of codes, we use the decision tables. Let's see how it is created. Select decision table from the context menu and provide a name. In a procedure or a function, the programmer has to write a select from a table or select from a view, right, to be able to pick up the values and run the logic. Similarly here, without writing any single line of code, we define the data foundation from where we want to select those fields. For example, Let's go with the customer master here, KNA1. And we have the table available here. So select customer number, city, and the postal code from ERP1.table name. Instead of writing that SQL script, we just go ahead and select customer number, postal code, and the city from this table. Now, once the fields are selected, we have here to the right-hand side in the output panel those attributes that we've selected. And then the lower part of the screen in the output panel will give us those calculated attributes. If you want to concatenate the first name with the last name or apply certain operator-based calculation on the attributes they've selected, you can do so just like in calculated columns. Then we have parameters, for example. Right-click New, and you can assign a parameter just like we would do in a function or a procedure. Invite a prompt for applying the parameters, for example. Or use that prompt as an output parameter, for example. Yep. So we have ZPAR1, type, data type, length. Here we have a parameter. So you can define based upon the requirement of the logic or the algorithm whether you want to have two parameters, one for input, one for output, or just a output parameter based upon the condition that you define here. The conditions box or the conditions folder is here. If we were supposed to write a procedure or a function, we would be writing a loop where condition and then get the loop closed in a SQL scripting. Likewise here, the graphical approach is to offer a condition. Now please make a note that we need to have at least one condition and the one action to be able to successfully deploy that decision table. That's given here. The decision table should have at least one condition and one action. The condition is the logic. Just like we will have a logic in a SQL script. That's our logic. And the action is the result of that logic that we expect, that you want to read or find or go for a lookup and find a value if the value equals, and then have a counter of the number of the values. For example, read all material IDs where material type is special stocks. Or find out those material IDs where ID equals from 1 to 5 and then go for an update to another table. Right? So that's how we can define a condition and an action. Please make a note that we need to have at least one condition, one action. It's a frequent certification exam question and common interview question. So once you define the attributes, we later move on to the conditions. Say, for example, condition is the city. Right-click, add as a condition. And then we want to have city, and then action could be the customer number, for example. Okay. So here we have city and a customer number. So we can apply a condition value when city equals Denver, for example. Get the customer IDs or count all customers. You can set a dynamic value here, count some. You can remove the default value here. So after that, we go with a option whether we want to go with the procedure or a decision table. Okay. Now, a decision table can also upload a certain conditions based upon if you have a Excel file that you have defined all of those condition types or condition values.
At this moment, if you don't mind, can I interrupt you?
You can upload those. Right. So, for example, if a user has got a condition types and it's not available here in HANA, but it will be loaded from an Excel, so you can just right-click and then import data from Excel. Okay.
Parag?
Yep.
Can I interrupt you at this moment, if you don't mind?
Yep. Go ahead.
I'm trying to understand what is the reason when you're creating a view or a model, what would be the requirement where you have to write procedure or decision tables. Can you please explain how this links to the model or view we created, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So as we've mentioned earlier, if you want to do a lookup or you want to find a material type or find the material numbers from 1 to 5 where type equals T1 or any conditions that you have for your view or a table, you can have those procedures written in SQL or else the logic given here in the decision table. In this example, in this example, we're going to find here all those customer count where customer belongs to the city of Denver. So if we were supposed to write a select statement or a procedure, we would have written select customer number from ERP1 dot KNA1 where city equals Denver, for example. So this would be the select statement that would have been written. It will take some time to write this line of code. It could be other nested select statement. It could be other loops within the loops. So instead of writing a select statement or selecting or going with a lookup functions or trying to get a material type where material equals the special stocks, for example. So instead of writing those SQL statement, we can achieve those here with conditions and actions and decision tables.
Okay, I understand. But you know, in the end, the user is getting reporting of the analytical attribute or calculation views, right? So I'm just trying to understand, okay, we did this, how do we integrate this into those views? So unless, can the user do reporting on top of decision tables is also another option?
Yeah. So I'm coming to the point.
Okay.
Once we understand the concept, So let's go here. Once we are able to define the condition, then we will have the action result. And once we successfully activate, the decision table will be part of the _sys_BIC. So whenever a view gets activated for the reporting, it reads from the sys_BIC. Similarly, when a procedure gets activated, it's available from sys_BIC. Likewise, the decision tables, whenever they are activated, will be available here in the sys_BIC. So the sys_BIC acts as a container for all the reporting, whether we want to directly report from a view, or let's say there is an attribute view directly with a simple baseline design, or corresponding analytic views, or other calculation views with a direct baseline design, could be directly consumed at the reporting tool via the sys_BIC. Likewise, plus if you want to add any logic on top of these baseline views, you may do so by creating a procedure and calling that or creating or executing the procedure on top of these views. Likewise, decision tables on top of these views. Once they are activated, then you'll be able to see that object in the SIS-BIC, which will be available for the reporting. So in certain conditions and certain scenarios and use cases, a customer reporting consultant may not be directly looking at the baseline fields or whichever fields coming in from the source. They may want to apply some logic. Say, for example, find out those customer IDs where customer type equals ABC or some other values. So they want to maybe apply a logic. So the application of the logics could be done either at the procedure, functions, or decision tables. The common practice that we see today is all the logics are applied at the universe level rather than here at the view or table level. Because the universe, which will be outside of HANA, will be able to connect with HANA or other big data systems. So if you restrict a logic right here and use that for reporting, it will be only one-to-one logic applicable. But in some cases, a customer may say, hey, I have been using Microsoft BI for the last 7 years. We have all the business information in the Microsoft BI. Now we have SAP HANA. How do you provide the logic here? Because I want to merge these two, or because we want to run some comparative analysis for supply chain. So in those cases, creating procedures and decision tables in HANA does not make sense at all because the user is requesting beyond HANA. In those cases, we create universe and write the logic at the universe level, which is a best practice. But if it is a native HANA use case, if your customer is only using HANA as a source for the reporting, in those cases, we can create functions, we can create procedures here, and even decision tables here, which could be consumed at the reporting via the SIS-BIC. So it depends upon the requirement, the ecosystem, and our thought process. Where should we apply the logic? Should we apply the logic at the DB? Should we apply the logic at the universe? Or is it possible to apply the logic at the reporting on the runtime? Depending upon the use case types, we will be able to decide where the logic could be applied. So in cases where we're running native HANA, we go with procedures and decision tables. If you have enterprise HANA use cases with other Microsoft BI, SAP BI, or Oracle data warehouse queries, or maybe Teradata, or maybe you're connecting to Hadoop systems, in those cases better to go with the multi-source universe on top of HANA in the BOJ layer before we enter into the report writing or generating reports. Another important point that we also have to remember is decision tables can only bring at the moment a table group or a views group. We cannot combine tables with views together in one foundation. It is either table-based or view-based. So decision tables are still work in progress. We already have newer beta testing going on in the SAP labs to have more complex, rather than just have a simple conditions. We could have more complex where we could also apply a graphical alternative towards the object-oriented programming without using a single line of SQL code or about code. We would still be able to achieve the logic or the algorithm here in the decision table. That is work in progress now. Due to our training requirements, we have acquired the expert developer license, which allows us to able to see the decision table. Some of customers already have the decision tables, but they will not be able to deploy extensively due to certain limitations, as it is still work in progress. There is a separate information given in other SAP notes about the decision tables. You may want to use your SAP ID and log on into the marketplace and do some research on how we can extend the decision tables beyond HANA rather than using it only for native HANA. Those are the other extra research that you can perform. So let's come back here to the design definition. So I was referring to a scenario where we are picking up the Denver city only from the master data. But maybe the user says that, hey, I have the data in Excel. I want to upload those conditions or condition types or condition values from Excel. It's possible to upload from Excel, and then you'll be able to get the, once you run or once you activate this, you'll be able to view those customer number, which is from Denver. Now, let's go back here. You can also assign the ZPAR1 as a action, for example, here. Okay. And let's go back here into, so you have a ZPAR1. You can assign the dynamic values, or going to remove this one here, and then we go here with a set for sum of Kunder. So how many customers belong to Denver, for example. Yep. So you can also read the customer IDs from the customer master data from KN1 table right away, or just go with customer count, for example. Or maybe find out a customer whose customer ID is 99 and who is also from Denver. So you can do such activities. But the limitation here is only tables if you're using tables, and only views if you're using views. It cannot merge tables and views together, just like what we have in the calculation views. So it's still work in progress, and you may have some questions in your interviews regarding decision tables. You just have to remember the logic, the concept, but it is not GA, globally available for all permanent production license users, because it's not released for customers to deploy it. Since we are using an expert developer license for the training, we're seeing those features which are not yet available for production, but which are available for test development and beta testing. So we give you that detail, and it will help you for your future real-time projects. Yep. Okay. So the difference between a function or a procedure with a decision table is that a procedure will be requiring the user to write those conditions in the SQL scripting, and a decision table will not require SQL coding. Since the decision tables are still work in progress, we will be only able to understand the concept and not be able to actually apply decision tables. However, once they're activated, you'll be able to see those in the SysPIC schema, which will be used for the reporting when you connect with the reporting tool. So if you want to apply a logic through a decision table for your views, you will be able to create a decision table, but you have to wait for the next support pack or the next release of HANA where decision tables are fully functional. For the training and development, we are only using a way to see how decision tables are built, but will not be able to actually execute because the license is only test and development. It's not globally available for production users. Okay, so in the future, maybe by the end of the first half of next year, when you have the HANA system round about SP10 or 11 or HANA 2.0, which is supposed to be released by the second half of next year, 2015, we expect the decision table will be fully functional, and once we create and activate, we'll be able to see that in the SysPIC, just like the views, and then use it for reporting. Okay, let's move to the right-hand side of the screen. We have here at the right-hand side, validation, activation. These are other mass activities which allows a consultant or a solution architect to be able to validate, activate all of the views or through the packages in a single click. So maybe there is a cutover strategy for your baseline, for the data cutover or design cutover that you're running in the final prep before we're going live. You want to ensure that all your packages which are developed by your consultants or your team should be validated and activated before we go for transports or before we go for a test cases or even before going go live. So the mass validation, mass activation helps a consultant or a lead to be able to run those validation activation with a single click. So I just clicked here on the validate here, and I can validate all of these packages together with a single click. Just add it and validate all of those together. So rather than visiting individual views, which will take a lot of time, you can bring in all those packages here and validate once. And this is generally performed in the cutover strategy. I believe some of you had experience of the cutover. Yep. So a cutover strategy planning phase will basically decide a data cutover, a design cutover, a reporting cutover, and then the user cutover. In the design cutover, before you're ready for transports, you should be responsible to ensure that your views are active and valid, because we don't want to send any inactive object to the production system and import fails in those cases. So these are mass validation and correspondingly mass activation steps. The third link over here is the redeploy, and this is for some repair activities that if a activation fails, you can redeploy to ensure that the object is consistent, that the object is reactivated, and that the object is compatible with the support pack version. So a redeploy will perform three things in the background. Number one is reactivation. So it will perform reactivation. So we're going to reactivate the object. Number two, it will check consistency of that object. Maybe it is used elsewhere. Maybe it is part of another package, or else maybe you have a view, a calculation view which has analytic views, but the dependent analytic view has a dependent attribute view which is not yet active. So it will go down to the level of the building block and then check the consistency and reactivate the dependent attribute views, and then analytic and then calculation views thereafter. The redeploy also performs compatibility check. The compatibility check is basically post upgrades. Let's say there is a customer user who is running HANA SP5 and would like to go for an upgrade to SP7, for example, or 8 or 9, whichever is the case. After the upgrade, the packages which were built on SP5 may not be compatible with the newer release of SP9 or SP10 or SP8. So therefore, certain views which were already developed, activated at the lower revision numbers can be upgraded with the newer features of the newer revision numbers through the redeployment. During the upgrade phase, there is a prepare phase which the basis will check all the view definition and they will apply a SAP note. But a HANA application consultant may also perform a recheck, reconciliation of those packages views which are developed in the lower revision number. What happens to those when you go with a newer version or post-upgrade? It may fail, it may not get activated, it might get corrupted, so hence report not available. So in those cases, we just click here redeploy, and it will perform these three activities: reactivate to repair, check consistency to align and synchronize, and then to make it compatible to be able to run on the newer revision number. Very frequent certification and interview exam question on what is a redeploy. Can you give us an example and how redeploy, where, when it is used? Yep. So let's make a quick session note. Yep. You have a question?
Yeah, Param, I'm sorry. There had been some audio disruption while you were explaining the redeployment. So what I could understand, that if there is a version change from SP7 to SP8, at the time of redeployment, automatically it is going to align itself for the changes? Some kind of a migration?
Yep. Yep. So it will go back to the kernel. It will go back to the support back upgrade components, which will check the alignment and the consistency of a view which has come in from an SPN to SPN +1 or +2 or +3. So the redeploy will be able to ensure that we have a consistent, compatible view. Rather than in other systems, we have to manually check and manually run those programs to align post-upgrade. So here in HANA, post-upgrade redeployment will be able to align and make the object active post the upgrade, so maybe post any repair changes. So I'm going to write down those scenarios one by one. Scenario 1, during development, when you try to activate and the activation fails, you have checked the view definition, you have checked the object definition, dependent objects definition, all looks okay. You've also run a successful validation, but when you try to activate, it fails. So you're not aware where the problem could be. As far as your development goes, you're okay with all the technical definition and looks okay to you, but when you try to validate, it goes okay, and when you try to activate, it fails all the time. So during development, when all your activation fails, what we do is to redeploy. The redeploy would be able to repair your object, and it will be able to make the object active if the validation was active. If the validation fails, it will not be able to redeploy. So you'll have to connect with the SAP support team or your consulting firm support team to be able to run the remediation and repair those objects during development. Scenario 2. During upgrades or downgrades. Upgrade could be from SPN to SPN +1, or a downgrade could be from SPN to SPN-1 or 2. There were a couple of customers in Europe where they had to go down the level. They were going too advanced, and then the higher support pack was not yet stable. There were certain bugs because they were doing so many advanced things together in one SID. So they had to downgrade. So during the downgrade, the package view which was already activated in the higher support pack should be compatible in the lower support pack as well. So the redeployment was conducted, and it was able to. So there is a small reference, kind of a table in the operating system kernel of the SUSE Linux, which will be able to ensure the redeployment for upgrade, downgrade for higher or lower support pack numbers. So these are the two scenarios that we have. So a redeployment will perform the three things, which is number 1, reactivate, 2, consistency check, 3, compatibility check. So in scenario 1 here, during the development phase, activation fails and we run and redeploy and it works. That's because it would go ahead and check the validation rules, activation rules, and redeploy it. It may also go to the level of consistency check or compatibility check and activate your object. In scenario number 2, for any upgrades, that the package view was developed in the lower support pack and now you've gone for a higher support pack post the upgrade. Maybe the view got corrupted due to the upgrade, or maybe the view is not consistent. So therefore, we redeploy. Likewise for the downgrade. So the redeployment is a very handy automatic step that a user can perform as a self-service repair. If the redeploy fails, then we have to connect to SAP support staff or raise OSS message. All right. Let's go to the next point here, mass copy. And we were able to see Yep. So the next point here is the mass copy. And we were able to see the mass copy option earlier on how we copied a sub-content package. If you can have a look on the left-hand side, sub-package 01 from another package, one of your package, into this package. So it allows us to copy from one package to the other. So we have to select here, click mass copy, put the source, and put the target, and then run the copy from one package to the other package. So that's a mass copy option. The next one here is the import-export. This is where the HANA transport are conducted. The HANA transports are first configured in something called as a CTS Plus, STMS, RevTrack, Solution Manager, Charm, and other systems part of the SOX compliant transports. So let's see what a transport means in a general context, and we go into the HANA context of what a transport. So what is a transport? A transport means to send an object from one place to the other place. In a SAP transport, it is to not send or move, but to send a copy of the objects from one system to the other system. So we're going to have a dev for development activities. which then later, after development is done, we send it to the QA for test cases, testing, test scenarios. And if all the test results are accepted by the sponsors, then we go into the production transport. So this is a general route of sending a copy of the object. It's not actually moving the object from one system to the other. So you're sending a copy of the object. That's a transport in the context of SAP. So that's SAP transport. You will need a collector placeholder to copy the objects to that container and send the objects. Yep, that's how SAP transports are conducted. And to perform this transport from one system to the other, there will be a transport number, like a consignment number. When you send a shipment, there will be a consignment number. Likewise, here, a transport number assigned for your SAP transports. Now, SAP HANA transports. The SAP HANA transport will perform a similar sending a copy of the objects from one system to the other system with or without transport number. Since there are three types of transports in HANA, one type will require a transport request number, another maybe not. So the three types of transports in HANA are as follows. One is through delivery unit based transport. Two is through a developer transport. And three is a support type of transport. Very common certification and interview exam question, the types of HANA transport. So we have a DU-based or delivery unit-based, or a developer type-based, or a support type-based types of transports. In ideal cases, a delivery unit-based type of transport is used for enterprise use cases. An enterprise HANA use case is a environment landscape where you have dev QA production. The developer can be used in either the enterprise or native HANA use cases. The support could be used for both, but it will be only for help that you need from SAP. So on need basis, when you need help from SAP, you send the export to the server for support type, and the SAP will raise an OSS message of connection to your HANA system through SAP router strings, and the basis will be able to help and then have a support type of transports. So out of the three, the first two is used in all implementation projects, POCs, pilots, and development projects for a customer. And the third is only used when you need some help from the SAP support global team. So, how do you perform SAP HANA transport? How to transport SAP HANA objects? There are two steps. One is to export. And then the other is to import. So you export to a server, or you export to a location, and then import it from there after you switch the systems. So you export it from a dev, then you switch the system to QA, and then you import. Yep. So let's go into the system.
Hello, Param.
Yep.
Param, I'm sorry to disturb you in between. Actually, I'm facing some audio disruption, right? And I'm not able to understand. My connectivity is absolutely fine. So, what needs to be done actually? Because I cannot hear your voice in bits. I can hear your voice in bits and pieces, right? So it is creating a problem this session. So, what I need to do
You
from my
can
end?
try
Can you please help?
to log in again.
Audio check.
Just you go to exit and leave meeting, not click on end the meeting. But if you click on end meeting, we'll close the meeting for a session for everyone. So you can leave meeting and then reconnect. I think that sometimes works. That also applicable for others, and including myself. If I have some audio problems, I just reconnect, and it works. Okay, so let's go back to the notepad. And here, the steps are to first export your package or the views, and then switch over to the next system, and then import. So these are the steps that are required to perform HANA object transport. You first have to export, and then you have to import it. Now, when we export for these two types, let's go with these two types. Okay, so let's go to these two types, delivery unit based. When we export locations are as follows. You can export to the server, and then you can also export to a client system or a local file system, and or else you can attach it to a SAP transport request. So these are the three export locations that are available whenever you select the unit-based transport export. So we'll see first of all the DU-based or the delivery unit type of transport. So you first have to create the delivery unit and then assign the package and then run the export to the server, to the client, or attached to a transport request. So where do we create delivery units? We scroll down here to the quick launch, and we create the delivery units here in the setup. So we've seen setup for managed preferences. The configure import server will be handled by the BobJ, where the BobJ server details will be provided to connect into HANA. And then here the third link of delivery units to be created. So when you click here, you'll be able to see a pop-up screen where all existing DUs are available or delivery units are available. So in order to create a new DU or delivery unit, you click here on create, and then you will be allowed to provide the delivery unit details, the name, the vendor, the responsible user. In some projects, creating a delivery unit may be restricted by the hardware vendor if a application user is not authorized to create that delivery unit. Or if the hardware vendor has created the settings of not to be able to run the transports. For example, we cannot create a transport from a production system or a QA system just like that. It has to be opened, and then you can run a transport from there. The training environment that we have here is both a test and development, meaning you can run developments, you can run testing, so it will behave like both a dev or a QA system. So with the approval of the vendor, once you have the authorization to create a DU or a delivery unit, you give the name and then you click OK, and then you add the delivery unit to that package. So for example, we have this particular DU which is selected. Click here on add. You may want to add your delivery unit to your package. This is how we add it here. When you add the DU, or when you assign the packages to the DU, it will also pick up the subfolders, and then you can assign and then close the delivery units. So this is how you create and assign. If it is not allowing you to create, there will be one which will allow you to or assign your packages to the DU, and then we export the delivery unit. To export the DU, we will click here on this option export, because this is the first step. You have to export first, and then we import the corresponding objects. You can export from here, or from the file drop-down menu, export from here. In some of the interviews, there are questions, and I do ask this question, that if you don't have a quick launch, can you still run and export? The answer is yes. So if I close all of these screens, I'm going to close all, and we don't have any quick launch here, the screen is absolutely blank. We don't have anything here. But still, we can run and export. Just got muted. Yeah, so we've closed the quick launch, and there is nothing here on the screen, but still we can click here on File drop-down menu and click here on Export. When you click on Export, it will show you the options of exporting the HANA object, the SAP HANA content, and select the first type, the delivery unit based. These are the three types of transports that are available in HANA. First is a delivery unit based, the other is a developer based, and the third is a support type or support based. You got to select the DU here and click here on next, and we ask you select the source from where you want to export. So we want to export from this system, for example, your source dev. Click on next. It will ask you to select your delivery unit from the drop-down menu. When you select the delivery unit, you'll be able to see your packages in here. And there is a filter by time option checkbox, which allows us to handle dynamic transports or automatic transports. It's called as auto transports. The automatic transport will be able to automatically pick up all of those changes that are saved and activated from your views and packages, provided they are assigned to a DU, and you can freeze a time. Let's say filter by time, for example. If you select this checkbox, you'll be able to get into the time range. Maybe there is a freeze period of development, and after that freeze period of development, no transports may be allowed. So in those cases, you assign a filter by time, or you can come back every time here and run a manual export. Okay, just hold on. Okay, so here, if you select this checkbox, filter by time, it will ask you to select a time range, for example, and you can select the time range maybe from this date to this date. You can assign the automatic transport. Or we come back here manually and run the transport, whichever is convenient to the developer. But what is important is the export location. We got 3 locations, whether you want to export to the server, or export to the client, or attach it as a transport request. If you export to the server, it will export to the same server, and then we can import from that server by switching to the next system. You can also export to the local client file systems and import it from there, or maybe attach to a transfer request. So we'll see the first option of the export to server. Click here on next. All the transport files will have a particular naming standard or a file format, which is .tgz. This is the file format of a transport file. If you are a basis consultant and you're working with the transport management and you're applying for a basis certification, it's a frequent exam question. What is the file format of a transport file in HANA whenever you export? .tgz. Click here on Finish. Let's pull up the job log, and then we see here the export steps of the logs. Export is successful. We've done the export without using a quick launch, so there were no quick launch here. We've done the export from the file drop-down menu by clicking here File and running the export. Likewise, you can call back the quick launch by clicking here on Help. Click here on Quick Launch, and then you can also click here Export, and you will have a same pop-up screen for running the export. Once the export of the DU based is performed, then we switch over the system from Dev to QA by clicking here Select System. You select the target system, maybe a QA or production system, and then we click here on Import. After you click here on Import, we've got multiple options to import the HANA content, whether it is a data from a local file that we've seen earlier, or else the import of a DU. When you click here, it's going to give you the details. Select the delivery unit to import the objects from your server or client locations, those TGZ files. So you're going to click here DU based, click here on Next, select the server because we've exported the server, click here on the file. It will give you the file and the components that are part of the package and sub-packages with the views. There are certain post-import actions that are here which are automatic selected. First is auto override inactive versions. So if you're re-importing for any remediations or retrofitting, you can re-import and will override inactive versions. Or maybe you want to select or unselect whether you want to activate it by yourself, for example. Click here on Finish. Go to the job log. Import is going on. and then it's successful now. Double click. Yep. So this is how we import from a server. Export to server, import from the server. But between, you have to switch the dev to QA steps given here. How to transport HANA objects? You have to export first, and then remember to switch the system from dev to QA to production as per the landscape, and then run the import. Similarly, we go back here to the export, go with the delivery unit based. We've earlier selected export to server. We will now select export to client. We'll bring in the DU container, export to client, and it's asking us browse from which location of the file system do you want to export the transport file. So we're going to select our folder from My Documents. Click here on Next. So it's going to export the delivery unit transport file with all our package and sub-package views into this location, into the file system. It could be a secure network directory. It could be your local desktop or your folder you can export to your target location. Check post the export to your folder. Right, so you see here .tzz file type, which is not modifiable in any file system except HANA. So once you run the export to the local file system, then we click here on import, select the DU based, next, import from the client, select the file location. You can choose to activate yourself, post the import, and then run the import. In some projects, you will have a separate transport management team coming from the basis or SAP basis running the transport. HANA application consultants may not be authorized to run these transports, exports, or imports. But if it is a small-scale project, an application consultant is also expected to run the export-import. The third export location is attached to a transport request. When you select the third export location attached to a transport request, it is going to require a CTS configuration for the customer, CTS Plus. Then there is STMS. Some of us may have experience if you're a basis or a transport consultant. So CTS Plus will define the route of dev QA connectivity to the production. STMS will be able to run all the imports, align the imports as per the sequence of the arriving transport requests. These are the common gateways for running SAP transport, SAP ERP transport requests, SAP BW transport requests management, and other SAP application transport request management through CTS and STMS. Likewise, in SAP HANA, there is a third export location, whether if you want to export to a transport request. You select this option, a transport request should be created in SAP Solution Manager. Since SAP HANA Studio does not have transaction codes, as it is an Eclipse-based environment, so in order to create the SAP transport request, we connect HANA to Solution Manager through the CTS Plus configuration, apply the STMS components for running transport management, and then create the transfer request as a workbench or customizable transfer requests, and then create a subtask, after which we allow the developers to assign to that transfer request. So when you select and click on next, it is going to ask us to go to the URL where you will be able to log on to the solution manager. The URL is the Solman URL, Solution Manager URL. And if you're using the transfer request, you need the license of the CTS Plus. You will require the license of the STMS, then plus other third-party like RevTrack license, Charm. These are all the other third-party tools that require additional license, thereby additional cost of the implementation. So a lot of customers do not go with the transfer request route until they have a license already in their installation base. If a customer already has got these licenses, they will be able to use it. Otherwise, new HANA customers or native HANA customers do not go with the transfer request route because it requires additional resources, additional license, additional systems, additional gateways, additional compliance for transports, thereby increasing the effort for the customer. Let's go to the second type of the transport, the developer type. Now we have observed that if you select the delivery unit based, your package has to be completely developed. Yep, right? So we were looking into the delivery unit based, which requires the package to be completely developed, and then you export the package. Now what if there is a need to selectively export the view? For example, you're developing attribute views, and then you started creating analytic views, but you want to send your attribute view for testing first so that you can align your development of the next object. So what if there's a need to selectively send a view rather than waiting for the complete package to be developed? In delivery unit based, we only send the package, and for which we have to wait for the package and sub-package and the views to be completely developed, validated, and activated. And then we send the delivery unit-based package transport. A developer type will allow a user to selectively send a view. So I'm going to click here. Maybe let's go to one of your package. Right? So I'm going to one of your packages, and I'm going to select these two, for example. So there is a way to selectively send out the dependent objects. First, have them tested into the QA system and everything goes okay. Then you can send the analytic views after that. So developer type of transport is a very flexible and very preferred way of transport by a lot of HANA consultants, application consultants, transport consultants. Because we don't have to wait for the complete package to be completely developed. We can start sending as and when the views are ready and activated. Okay? So developer type will ask you for a location. Let's go for the desktop here and finish. Go to the desktop location, to the IDS folder. Yeah, so here's the package name. And these are the two attribute views transport files that have been exported to the local file system. After that, we switch over to the next target system by selecting your QA or production system, and then we import that file, developer type, next, file location, your package folder, the subpackage, and those two attribute views appear here. Then we have an option to selectively import. So we can selectively export or selectively import a view based upon your development phases. You can selectively export, you can selectively import a view rather than waiting for the complete package to be built, which will take some time. So you can start sending out your views for transport export as and when you created and activated those views. So I'm performing a selective export for these two, and now I'm performing selective import of only the customer attribute view first to be tested. So this gives the flexibility to a developer or consultant or user or transport team to accelerate the process of the development. So we don't have to wait for the complete packages and subpackages to be built. We can already start sending out those views whenever they're activated. Okay. Now moving on to the next type. So the next type of the transport is the support type, which is only to be used if you need a help from the external SAP support team. So we go here. All right. So when you run the export, you will be able to see the support type export is completed. Remember that this is only to be used when you need external help from the SAP support. So that's how we have a third type of transport. I would request everybody to practice. All right, so I would request everybody to practice after the session. So remember the three types of transports: the preferred type of transport, and in the session note, I'll write down a small area for troubleshooting. This has to be done in collaboration with the basis and or the transport management team or transport team. Number one, when performing a delivery unit-based transport, we have to make sure that all views are active for that selected package or sub-packages. Next, when performing a developer type transport, we have to make sure that all dependent active views are exported first, and then the further active views are exported. Yep. So we have to make sure that when performing a developer type of transport, all the dependent active objects are transported first, and then the further objects are to be transported. Example, if we transport a analytic view which has got two attribute views, right? So when you export that analytic view, without transporting the dependent attribute views, the import will fail. Since we have not transported the dependent objects first and you're exporting the further objects, so the import will fail. So we have to make sure that all dependent active views are transported first, and then we further send the other views. These are important troubleshooting questions that you may have from your team, or else an interview question on troubleshooting for transports. Number 3 is for all transports, we have to make sure that the underlying schema are mapped between transport systems. What it means here in the third troubleshooting use case is that, for example, that we have a, let's say, there is a attribute view, yeah, and the attribute view is built on a data foundation, right? Data foundations coming from a schema, which could be schema S1 dot table name, let's say a customer table. So there is a customer table from the schema S1, and we're using the customer table from schema S1 to create our customer attribute view, for example. And when we try to export the customer attribute view, and run the import, during the import step, it would search for that particular schema S1 dot customer table. It will search during the import. And if the search does not come back with this same schema, then import fails. All right, let me give you the same example in a graphical diagram. There is a customer attribute view, for example, and this is based out of a schema S1 dot table name customer. And this particular view exists in the development system, development HANA. When you try to run a transport to the QA HANA system, QA HANA system, the import will search for that same exact schema name dot the table name. So the schema should also exist in the target system, QA production. That means we have to map these two schemas. We have to align these two schemas. The best practice for all the basis transport consultants is to ensure that all schemas are identical between transport systems. Or else map all schemas between transport systems. Okay, this is a very important troubleshooting. We frequently have such questions in our consulting. Therefore, we have to remember the areas. Yep. Okay, so the schemas have to be created in the respective system, and the views are transported. The tables, the schemas are not transported. They are uploaded, extracted from the respective sources. Yeah. So let's go here. You'll have your development HANA system, which is connected to the development source system. And then a data flow happens in between these two. Likewise, a QA HANA system is connected to a QA source system, and then the data flow happens in between these two, and then the transport happens between Dev HANA to QA HANA and Dev source to QA source. When we are replicating the tables, all of those schemas will be available here for Dev, which is created here, respectively for QA, which is created here from the respective QA source. So the transport does not occur for schemas or tables. We do not transport tables or schemas. We only transport the views. And when you're transporting the views will try and pick up the corresponding table from the schema from the source. So that's where we have to align these two schemas together to have a successful import. A schema S1 could be there in SAP HANA source, but for QA HANA system it could be S2, schema 2. Schema names are different. So therefore, we always have to align and map these two schemas. This is a responsibility for the basis. We'll be able to take care of something called as schema mapping. Now, a HANA consultant, if required to run such schema mappings, we can do so by clicking here, Change Authoring Schema. in the quick launch. So if we click here, change the authoring schema, for the package views, for example, here, if you have multiple schemas, you can select the individual package view, and so from a source schema, you can align to a target schema. In this training environment, we do not have a target system, therefore schema mapping is not possible, but maybe in real-time projects when you're using Dev HANA, QA HANA, Production HANA, in those cases it's required to map schemas if schema names are different. So you got to map it from here. Single step, single click. Yep. You can explore the other links from here. Auto documentation. It will allow to have a PDF document with the technical design definitions in an SAP template. And then you have here migrate. If you click here, it is going to enable the multilingual features. Maybe in some localization projects, you've created a global template in the US in English, and the localization project is going to take place in Germany, for example, where they have installed their HANA and uploaded the data all in German. So in order for your package descriptions of the views, descriptions of the objects, to be automatically translated to German, we enable the multilingual feature by clicking here on migrate and selecting the package and the subpackage from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So migrate here does not mean migrating from one version to the other or database migration. Migrate here means just to enable the multilingual feature. And we remember that when you're creating a package for the first time, it was asking the selection option for selecting international languages. And HANA is a Unicode system. It understands all international languages as part of the dictionary. So migrate here is a term which was given in German and then got translated, and it's now called as migrate. It means here to enable multilingual features. The next link here after the auto documentation is a switch ownership. The switch ownership is only for those cases where one developer leaves the project and then there is a view which is still inactive. So maybe when you're receiving such objects from the developers who are leaving the project, those inactive objects could be further developed, enhanced, or even deleted. So in order to enhance, develop, or delete, we have to own that object first. So we have to take the ownership from that user for that inactive object. So it's given here, select the inactive object or objects that you want to take over from the other user. So if a user consultant leaves the project and you are the replacement, you remember that you have to take the ownership of certain inactive objects. Or else you have to create the object all over again and not be able to delete the other inactive objects owned by the other users. So we take the ownership. It's not granting the ownership. It's taking the ownership from the source user, developer, to the target user that you're logged on. And whichever objects are developed and still inactive will appear here, maybe an attribute view or a calculation view that the previous developer was creating and then still left it as inactive. So you can bring it on to the right-hand side and then hit OK, and then you take the ownership of that object. Later you can decide to delete or update or enhance it further. Right. So we will proceed with the answers. Earlier questions from the chat box. I will just quickly pick those up first, and then we'll open for questions and answers. Okay, so earlier questions are here. Right, so question here is the HANA transport like the BW transport? So the question here is regarding the SAP BW transport with a transfer request number. All right, so it is similar.
No problem. Can you hear me? All this time we were not hearing you. You were typing, so I don't know if you noticed. Chat box, we were sending you messages.
I checked. You were on mute at your end, so I tried to unmute you.
Yeah, other people got the same thing. Anyway, now we can hear you. Just a quick question. A quick question, like you mentioned, the decision in the decision tables is in beta, so we will not worry about that. My question is, see, all these views are interconnected, like attribute, analytic calculation, privileges, but procedures is not shown as part of that connection. So my just quick question, if you write a procedure, how do you apply that into those views? That's where confusion was.
Okay. So a procedure or a function can be directly written inside of a SQL script-based calculation view. That is one way to apply a procedure directly in the view. So when the reporting user calls the view, it will also inherently call the procedure in that SQL script-based calculation view. Now, that particular procedure can also call other procedures outside of that view. Maybe a reusable code, which is not written in other SQL script calculation view, but it could be an independent procedure. So it can call other procedures. So that means a procedure can call other procedures, or a procedure can also have a sub-procedure written in there, and then we can call that from a SQL script-based view. And that view can also call other views through the procedures.
So like people like us, we're just learning, we appear in the, certification. Are they going to have question about procedure? Because you have to know the SQL, you have to know their script, and we don't know that yet. And the other question is, if you go into a job as a first-time developer, are they going to expect you that you know procedure and script and all that,
For the examination part, they may just ask you definition, what is a procedure? Can a procedure call another procedure? So some basic questions around that. For jobs, if the client is looking for a programmer, they will give in the description that you should have programming skills. But if the client is looking for a application developer who is going to develop views and the reports, will not be looking for skill set on programming like ABAP or Java or maybe SQL. So depending upon the client requirement. But in general, a HANA application consultant may just have an overview what is a SQL, where we write the SQL commands, and what is a procedure, where it can be called in from, how do you interlink a view with the procedure. So just those basics. Just like in SAP projects, a SAP functional consultant of SD need not be an ABAP programmer, or likewise a FI consultant need not be completely aware of what is how to write ABAP function modules, but just to know where ABAP codes could be written for customer user exits. That's just what is expected here in HANA as well. And it also depends on the project. If a client is looking for all-in-one in a consultant, which may be very rare, but they're looking for a programmer, they're looking for an extractor, they're looking for a data mining and data warehousing consultant, reporting consultant, and a security consultant all in one individual, may be rare, but it could be one of the requirements for small-scale projects.
So in this class, are we going to have a session where we will go and create our own schema, then create our own tables, and then create these views on top of these tables instead of going against ERP? Yep. Is that part of this class?
Yeah, it is already been informed that yesterday that when you create your user ID, your user schema will automatically appear, and then you can use your own schema and then create tables in there or upload tables or replicate tables into that schema. So the information here is when a user gets created, a schema on the same user ID is also created. We've seen an example here. If you go back into the ZUserPR, when you open this catalog, we see here ZUser_PR, and this you can create a lot of other objects, but one of them is a table that you can replicate your own tables here, or create new tables here through the replication through BODS. When you select, you can select your own schema, and or when you're using Excel upload, you can use your own schema ZUserPR. Likewise, ZUser SR. Likewise. So we don't have to manually type a SQL command to create a schema, although there is a feature create schema name. But the good news is without writing a scripting, we can still have our own user schema when we create our user IDs and thereafter have tables replicated into that schema.
But like creating these tables, because it's not part of this POC, right?
Creating tables?
Creating tables and these models is not part of this POC, the one we're working on.
Which models?
You know, like you're saying, we can. Like yesterday, I created my user, assigned it to a role. Now I can, like you're saying, I can go ahead and create tables and create attribute analytical view on that. That's for my personal practice. But as far as the POC is concerned, we are not doing that in that you know, the POC we're working on.
Yeah, so if you want to go for a self-practice, there is a sub-package 02. Initially, when you started creating packages, there was an indication that sub-package 01 is for the session, sub-package 02 is for your practice. So you can look up other, or you can upload your own Excel, and then you can have your own POC developed from your own data sets.
Okay, yeah, that's what I understand. But it's not part of your class that you're going to go ahead and create these tables and then go further into how to...
Yeah, in HANA we do not create tables, we replicate the tables from the source. So when you replicate using a BODS or when you're using a Excel upload, the table was automatically created. If you have run the practice, you'll be able to see the table structure definition with the data type which is created. So we don't have to actually manually think about what would be the data type for all the individual fields or the length of all the individual fields if you have to create a table. It's going to increase a lot of effort for the consultant. So the good part is when you replicate, it will create the structure of the source table with the primary key, with the not null constraints, with the data type, with the length. So if you have 50 fields, we don't have to manually create those 50 fields with the length data type manually here in HANA. It gets the replication of the structure as well. So
I'm sorry, I don't think I'm explaining the question right. I understand that because Mara, all these tables from ERP, we don't have to. What I'm saying is if there's a situation where you're creating your own schema and set of tables which is outside, away from ERP, you're doing it yourself, a project requirement is, then that's what I'm saying, you have to be able to create those tables within your schema and then set up the relationship and then create all these attribute view. I'm not talking about ERP, I understand that.
Yeah. And then so let's say an example, if you're connecting to a non-ERP Teradata, and there are 25 tables to be made available into HANA. The question here is, are we going to create those 25 tables manually in HANA? Such requirement do not exist because the replicator is evolved today. If we are not connecting to SAP ERP, let's say we're connecting to a DB6 or Informix DB. It's not an ERP system. It's not a OLTP. It's a DB or other systems. But there are 200 tables from there that we have to make the data available in HANA. Are we going to create those 200 tables? Or maybe just one table that we have to create? The replicator today is evolved, both the SLT and the BODS, even including the Excel export from those non-ERP sources, are now evolved to be able to copy the structure and reduce the effort of the developer in the HANA Studio. So every time a new scenario exists, we don't create the tables. And the other side is, if we manually create tables, there could be certain areas where we forgot to put a constraint, not null constraint, and then the table gets created, and then when you try to upload from the source, it throws back an error every time: data type mismatch, length mismatch, constraint mismatch with the source in the target table. So in order to reduce all these issues or complexity, the replicators today has evolved for HANA that even if we are connecting for a single table from other non-ERP sources, it can still extract structure with the data and reduce the number of errors, or reduce the complexity, or reduce the effort of the developer. Yep. But still, if you need to create a table, you can use the SQL console here and pass all the SQL commands: create table, alter user, grant role. So if you want to create a table, you can type here the SQL command, create table, table name with the columns. Another exploratory step is to go to your particular schema. For example, I go here to the user ID, I go here to my user schema, and then I have tables, and then I have an option to have a new table. If you run this exploration, new table, you can give a table name here, table 1, 2, 3, for example, and you can type the, let's say, user ID. The next is plus the username. So you can have these this option, but it will be completely manual activity. But if you're looking for such option, this is how you do it. Give the table name, the length, the data type, the length, let's say 12, and then the name is 22. Is it a key or not key? And then you can put that and activate the table. So this is a way to explore how, if you want to create a table. So now the table is created, the table 1, 2, 3, and if I refresh, I can close this. Yeah, I can refresh the tables from here. Right-click, refresh. I should be able to see table 1, 2, 3. Now once the table 1, 2, 3 is created, and then you run the proper mapping, you can also open the data preview for those two fields, but now the values does not exist. So on the fly, you can create such tables, but it will increase the effort of the development.
Okay, thank you. Just last question. Is it possible in this session, if you can spend some time just to show us against a non-ERP source and pull the data from there? Is it possible?
Yep, we have done a practice by simulating a non-ERP source, and from a non-ERP source there's an export of a Excel file, and then we are able to import an Excel file using the data from a local file. So if it is a non-ERP, and if you have to export a certain subset by combining multiple tables into an Excel spreadsheet, have it available, and then you can load it from a local file. This is one of the ways. The other ways is to give you in the additional session an effort about provisioning. That will be in session number 11. So in provisioning, this is for SDA. This is a newly developed data acquisition. Apart from the usual replicator of SLT or bots, you can run the SDA, Smart Data Access. The Smart Data Access is only if you are connecting from larger sources, and it will ask you to have a remote source connection, and then you can open or have the demonstration where you define the connecting parameters, or else you have to have a, remember the system privilege from yesterday? which allows you to create remote sources. You can right-click and create a new remote source, and then what is the adapter or the source. Let's say there's a source S1. These are some of the exploratory steps that's open for all to navigate. Let's say you're willing to connect with Hadoop without BODS, although BODS has a Hadoop Hive connector. Or maybe there are some generic sources, for example. So generic source, or you want to connect to a Teradata system or a Netezza system generic source, give the adapter details, connection, source name, other details of the connection, the credentials of the user and the password, and then activate this SDA connector, and then you'll be able to bring in from that source without storing the data here again in HANA, reducing the redundancy. So this is a new feature enabled in SP7 early adoption, and we'll be able to see that in HANA 2.0. But these are other areas that I would request everybody to explore, and you can have your system access available for a lot of other practice, not just the POC that we're looking here. You can bring your own data sets from other non-SAP source, export to Excel and upload to Excel, or use BODS. Now, BODS, when you connect, if you remember, you can connect to SQL Server. So, for example, this is a non-SAP, and you open the BODS designer, and then you can connect to the SQL Server. These are some of the SQL Server database scripts available there, sample, and you can also connect to SQL Server 2008 or R2 and connect and replicate, or connect to Microsoft Access. So using BODS, so you've seen the steps on how you can create a data store, but it will require you to go down to the micro level of how the connection works with the non-SAP, for which you may have to take up a separate certification BODS course. But in our POC example, we have picked up the most common scenario of financial with the sales for all the customers required to have the financial status of their HANA implementation. So we picked up the most common scenario. But over and above that, you are free to explore with other tools like bots and other sources. If you have your own Excel file, you can do so to bring in data into HANA to your schema.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Param, I have one small question, please.
Yep.
Yeah,
Open?
Param,
Go ahead.
Yeah, Param, actually, it's regarding the decision table. As you have mentioned, the decisions table is still in a very kind of a evolving stage, right?
Right.
So if so be that case, so what means? Do we expect many questions in the interview as well as in the certifications from that part?
Today, when we go out for taking interviews, we ask some of the basic questions which are part of SP7, and that includes the newer features, but that does not include decision table. But when you go to the level 2 of the interviews, we ask consultants who are coming in as solution architects or principal consultants or even senior consultants. We ask, do you have any awareness about decision table? And as an interviewer, we know that for sure that these objects are non-production based, but if you want to go to level 2, level 3 of the interviews, we do ask such questions. Like, for example, what is the definition? Can you give an example of how, where a decision table could be used, but although we know that it cannot be executed today. So these are some of the areas in interviews, and even in the certification question, you may have some definition questions around what is a decision table, what is an attribute view, what is a calculation view. So we will discuss those in session 12.
Okay, one more thing, a small request. If you can send me the, if you can arrange to send the PPTs of security and authorization which you have shown in slides, please.
Okay, I'll check that. I've already uploaded those. I will have a quick reminder to the team. Yep, I'll do that. And the session from tonight's session regarding transparency transports. I've created the session note. I've created some image files. This one, and this one. So save these files and send to the team to be sent out to all the participants. Okay. Any further questions? All right. So today we had transport session. The next session will be on the reporting. So it will give you a overview of what's coming up next. Reporting on HANA. This will be the next session. And then the next session after that is for basis on system monitoring, install, upgrade steps, etc., diagnosis, all of that. And then the session after that is an additional session in interest of all participants for interviews, customer engagement. So additional session will cover BW on HANA, SAP Solution Manager, Rapid Deployment Solution, HANA Live, use case, and some new other tools like SAP Lumira. There is an information composer which is now replaced, and then give you the highlight about the project phases, and then SAP River. So these are some of the additional topics that are not part of the certification course. So you don't have any questions from here, but you will have questions in your interviews, level 1, level 2, or customer engagement. That's why we're arranging a additional session. And then we will have our certification session, certification and interview session as a final prep. So here in the certification session, for your final preparation, we will give you the highlights about certification types, details, where to apply, how many questions do we have, negative markings, and how about the interviews, level 1, level 2 of interview technical grounds, questions with the right answers for both certifications and interviews. So this will be our final prep session.
Hello, Param, one last question if you may allow, please.
Yep.
Param, actually regarding when you were explaining transport, there had been some audio disruption. Just one small question I was thinking of asking you. In the perspective of transport, which many people does it, the application developer does it. They create the transport request and they give it to the basis. So, what is the level of knowledge an employer expects from a HANA consultant in the application level?
Well, today it depends, because if the employer or the client or the consulting firm is looking for a consultant who can actually give a overview highlight of a transport, is very, very helpful for that employer, because that consultant may go out all by himself into a client site and do transports, do development, do report users, run single sign-on all in one together. So that is what is expected for smaller scale projects or experimental projects or certain test and development projects. But if the employer is looking for a already implementation projects where they're only looking for one particular area, just developing views packages, they will look out for only a HANA consultant who can create views. But if you indicate that you know just beyond the development, you also have an overview about transports, the type of transports, and then you have some idea of how transports are executed by the basis, it will give you a better weightage for your profile. Not just transport, but security, reporting, extraction, etc.
Hi, Param, I have one question for you.
Yep.
So Saturday, the class time is the same as every day?
This Saturday, I have to check with the team. I think it will be same time.
Okay, it has
Or-
been communicated. I'm assuming that it's the same time.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Do you want to take a quick poll if you want to, if because it is a Saturday, you don't want to go back late, so do you want to have 1 hour earlier, maybe 8 p.m. EST?
Yeah, that will work for me.
Can we take a quick poll, everyone? Saturday session 8 p.m. EST. Okay, so we go with the majority. We have 6 yes and 1 no. So I think it's better to go with the majority and not to spoil our Saturdays. Let's have 1 hour earlier. I will inform to the training team. I think it should be 5 p.m. PST. If it is 8 p.m. EST, yeah. So right. So we'll have our session on 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday.
So what will be the time, India time? It will be around...
India time will be 6:30 a.m. IST.
Okay.
Is it good for you, Urban? 6 p.m. early morning? Wake up that time? Saturday.
Can you make it at 7 o'clock, please? 7 a.m.? It's a matter of half an hour. That's all.
But then it increases the time on the Eastern in US in Eastern time. So then it will be 8:30 p.m. Is it okay, everyone? Okay. So I have so then we have 8:30 p.m. now. 8:30 p.m. That will be 7 a.m. IST, and that will be 5:30 PST. Okay, so we go with that. So 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay, everyone. So I'll just inform for Saturday session will be at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Eastern Indian Time, and 5:30 p.m. Pacific Time. All right, my friends. So we're going to close for tonight. So we have today the transport. The next one coming tomorrow is the next session is on the reporting on HANA. So we'll see how we can use the business objects reporting tools, Webby, concept of the universe, understand the SAP Lumira, and how we use the Design Studio and few other reporting tools on the Webby, and then connectivity, client connectivity options. Then after that, we will be learning about some administrative tasks, especially for the basis. If you are an application consultant, you can just relax on the session, but it will be a good overview if you are also aware of how we run the upgrades, work around the upgrades, installation steps, and then the system diagnosis, running a tracing for the user, working with the services and the ports. That will give you a extra knowledge if you're an application consultant. Then for all, we have the next one after that additional session on additional topics which are very common today, and they are expected in interviews and customer discussions. After that, we'll have our interview session or certification session as a final prep next week.
Just one more thing, I'm sorry, I'll keep holding you back. I attended a session, Open SAP BW on HANA, and they were talking about that the Lumira and Design Studio will be the main, and also Microsoft Office are the main three tools up front for reporting. And so, you know, I'm just thinking tomorrow when you're going to discuss reporting, are you going to be able to cover all these, you know, like IDT and Webby and Crystal Reports or Design Studio, all this in one session?
Yep.
And you will be connecting that to your model, right? The one we created in the POC, right?
Yep. Through IDT, through the universe, because Crystal Reports have two ways to connect. One through the universe, UNX, but not the UNV. And then Webby cannot directly connect to HANA, so we go through the universe. But tools like Lumira, AO, Analysis Office with Excel can directly connect into HANA. And of course, Design Studio can directly connect to HANA and to BW and also to universes. We'll check out those.
So you're going to be able to show us all these different tools based on the model.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so all right, so it's good that you're attending Open SAP. We have. I'm still part of the team designing the course content for Open SAP as we provide it free of cost. But it will give you better development insights, and if you are.
Yeah, it's very interesting because this was the last week. I just took my final fourth week exam. Now I have to take the final exam. And now they're talking, a lot of things are changing. ADSO, Open, Open ODS, and Composite is completely changing. And there were so many new things which is coming in SP9. And so, all these things, I'm talking about just BW on HANA right now. And a lot of things are changing. So, and of course, which is not part of your class, but it was very informative,
Yep. So those are the good things that you can do in the community, on the public domain. It's good that you're also exploring those areas. We'll try and pick up some of the areas in the additional session with about the Lumira and how the dashboard is getting replaced by Design Studio, and some interesting area on RDS and Solution Manager, which is not part of the Open SAP, but it will help you for project management.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
All right, so this is what we have here tonight. One, two, three, 4 sessions for this program.
Param, one small thing, actually, just one small question. Is nothing related to HANA or anything?
Yeah. Go on,
Param. Yeah, Param, actually this is, Param, actually today I have faced severe audio problem. So what is, means, I'm trying to understand, is it a bandwidth issue or some, because I was not on mute, I had faced this problem. So I thought since you had been using this webinar, so actually I was thinking, sir, usually what are the troubleshoot actually? You have any idea?
Okay. So what you do best is you install the GoToMeeting executable file in your computer. What we're all doing is we just have a link, we just click on the link and then we connect to the meeting. But that's every time eating up the bandwidth of your current local internet speed. So if you install the exe file of the GoToMeeting or the GoToWebinar in your local computer, it will be able to, and you can install free of cost for 30 days trial. And then when you install that, and that will host the session ID that you have as a link, that you just click on that link, it will not host the meeting from the server, but it will host the meeting from your local computer, not host, but connect. So it will reduce the bandwidth of your local network, so then you will have a better uninterrupted service, and make sure that you're also not running other background internet activities.
Okay.
Yeah. So downloads, yep, all those, and then it's good to use. I've stopped using Chrome because Chrome increases the number of online ads, and they have a lot of background extensions which eat up the bandwidth. So therefore, I've switched back to Internet Explorer. You can also experiment with Mozilla. It's better. You can use certain app blockers to block the ads or other extension apps, and reducing the bandwidth. In fact, increasing the bandwidth performance.
Okay. The thing is that you are saying that you download that trial version of webinar. That is a practice.
GoToMeeting, yeah, you download that because we're using GoToMeeting, so you can download the EXE version.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to close for tonight. We have a session tomorrow. That will be same time. Saturday is on 8:30 p.m. EST. And I will just upload the Paint and the Notepad for your reference documents, and the other PPT documents I will check up with the team to be sent out to all of you after the session tonight. Okay, my friends, good night and have a good one. We're going to connect tomorrow, same time. Bye-bye for now.